So thank you for your right speech on right speech. So I want to say a little bit, first of all, so the standard thing in English is say right view, right meditation, right speech when we're listing the Eightfold Path. But I prefer, and I think my teacher preferred the word correct, because right has a kind of moral value judgment, but correct is specific to the situation. So I kind of like to think of it as correct speech. And if maybe someone here knows the original Sanskrit? Stan, do you know the original Sanskrit? Okay, so, all right.
But it can also mean uniting.
Okay, it can mean uniting? Okay, thank you. Anyway, so speech is extremely important, but the real reason why speech is problematic is because speech is dependent on distinction. Speech is dependent on this and that, noun, verb, subject, object, red, blue, past, present, future. So speech is dependent on making distinctions. You can't speak without making distinctions. And it's essential for our functioning for us to make distinctions. We have to do that in order to function. When you're driving a car, you better stop on a red light and you better go on a green light. You better know the distinction. It's very functional. But then we attach to these distinctions and then we give them an ontological weight. So ontological, that's a philosophical term for what is. So we give them a weight of existence that they actually don't have. And then we start arguing about them and fighting about them and disagreeing about them and being extremely unpleasant and causing all sorts of horrible things in this world, which if you look around you, you can easily see. You know, these days before I open my New York Times app, I think to myself, what fresh horrors await me? And because that's what our world is like, and that's what the world is like even in a local, sense. Like, Wenda was talking about she starts getting annoyed and she starts, yelling at her husband, and I'm sure he gets annoyed and yells back, and there we have it, And so this, we have to be very careful not to be seduced by speech, to keep our minds large and open. Use it, just like thinking. Speech and thought are tools, and we should use them, but not get stuck in them. That's really important. So thank you for your talk. Are there any questions? Oh boy.
If stories are a product of the mind, what is there to be said about stories of growth?
Wait, I couldn't hear you after. If stories are said to be products
of the mind, what is there to be said about stories on growth?
On growth? What kind of story on growth?
Personal development.
Oh, personal development?
Maturity.
Yeah. Were you once a baby?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you were a kid?
Yep.
And then you were a preteen?
Yep.
And then you were a teenager?
Yep.
And now you're a youngish adult?
Yep.
And then you'll be a middle-aged adult if you're lucky and you get there? And then you'll be old like me if you get there? So, what's the problem? So, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about personal growth, right? You're talking about sort of self-help kind of stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Loosely, yeah.
Yeah, loosely, yeah. So we can, it's important to speak honestly from our experience. That's a very important thing to do. to speak directly from our experience. But it's also very important not to get hung up on kind of not wanting to be what we are. So a lot of this self-help stuff, it's about wanting to go in a certain direction, which maybe is a direction that works for us, but maybe it's not. So people get ideas, people get ideas of how things should be, instead of letting things grow naturally for how things already are. So yeah, sometimes people make tremendous changes in their life. You have, yeah? People make tremendous, tremendous changes in their life. But when it comes organically, is different than a sort of dream of escape. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful. When change comes organically, that's different from when we have a dream of escape and use other people's words to get there, or to try to get there. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. So Zen means is a terrible way to start any sentence. When we practice Zen, we become, to use a horrible phrase, more fully present. A word that's sometimes used is intimacy. And this intimacy is not, oh, I'm so intimate with you. No, that's not the intimacy. The intimacy means that the barriers between us and the universe fall away. So we hear a bird, we're hearing our idea of the bird. We see a flower, we're seeing our idea of the flower. We smell coffee, we're smelling our idea of coffee. That's how most of us live our lives most of the time. So to let that drop, and then things can develop organically. And then if the narrative comes from genuine experience, then it's helpful. But always hold it lightly. You can't ever take anyone else's narrative for your narrative. And even your narrative is necessarily false, because narrative always smooths over the edges. It always changes things a little bit. Just noun and verb already makes a problem. So be careful. But yeah, use speech wisely, okay? So then we have Austin, and then Nick, and then Liz. Okay.
Can you guys hear me online?
No, they can hear you.
Okay, we got a thumb. Cool. I have perhaps incorrect perceptions of a variety of systems, political, economic, technological, that are going to cause immense harm in the near future that I can do nothing about. And I'm wondering, given that I have this thought that things are going to be, anxiety, given that I have anxiety about the future, what I can do in the present moment to make things better, given that I can't actually affect any of the systems that are causing the problems that I see. If that makes any sense. That was a lot of words. I'm sorry.
So the first flowering of Zen was at the end of the Tang Dynasty, which was 200 years of war, famine, disease, invasions, rebellions, repressions, bandits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Floods. I don't think they had earthquakes. But just about, locusts. They had locusts, okay? So in this country, in America, everyone here, there's somebody here not from America. In America, we have thought we were, if we were white, we thought we were exceptions to this sort of general rule of human suffering. So that just means you're a human being. You don't have to be anxious. Take it as it comes. Respond as you can. Everyone has different ways of responding. Everyone has different things that they can do. Some people demonstrate, some people write letters, some people become politicians, some people become bankers, you know. Everyone has different things that they can do. Some people go to Silicon Valley and become IT people. You know, whatever opens itself to you, just do it completely. And it's really important not to catastrophize. The catastrophe that happens is almost never the catastrophe that we see. So in 2017, my husband, on the screen there, was diagnosed with aggressive mantle cell lymphoma. We never saw that coming. You know? We didn't lie awake at night thinking, gosh, I wonder if Stan's going to get aggressive mantle cell lymphoma, you know? The people in Texas, in those really catastrophic floods, those kids who were swept out of their bunks in that camp, they were not expecting that. Maybe they were expecting heavy rains, but they were not expecting that. Occasionally, like with, you know, hurricanes are predictable, but most disasters are not predictable, whether they're personal or whether they're, you know, communal. So there's no point in catastrophizing. Just every minute, we just do what we can. And if everybody does that in their own way, then there'll still be a catastrophe somewhere. But we just move through it. We move through it. We're not exceptions. You accept that you're not an exception. And then you move through it. We are not separate in this world. You know, those people who build bunkers, someday they're going to have to go out of those bunkers, and then what will they do? So we're not separate. Nobody's separate. Just keep that in mind. Okay? Thank you. Nick.
What constitutes a correct question when words themselves can create attachment and discriminating views?
That one.
What did he say?
He said, what constitutes a correct question when words themselves attract something and discriminating views, right?
Yeah, it can create attachment and discriminating views.
Yeah, so that was your question. So don't, you know, I used to teach mathematics, and we always said there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing as an incorrect question. So just ask whatever question you have, and don't worry about it. So, you know, checking yourself, you know, stopping or saying, well, that's, you know, stupid, or that's discriminating, or that's attachment, whatever words you want to use, that's incorrect. If you have a question, you ask it. And then it's a genuine question. Okay? Do you have another question lying behind that question? Okay. Liz.
So on the right speech, and you know, and at first I was thinking, you know, it's silence during a retreat, but really if you're taking right speech being, you know, speak when you need to and don't speak when you don't need to. I mean, because sometimes on a retreat, even though it's a silent retreat, you still need to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't there for the meal, so I have no idea what happened with what Wendy is saying, but if I'm new there and I don't know what I'm supposed to do, somebody telling me, I mean, I would appreciate somebody telling me what I needed to do, that it was okay for me to get up and get the oatmeal. Maybe I didn't know that, you know? And so really what is true silence at a retreat? And is it necessarily just speech? Because maybe I'm not talking either at a retreat or here, but maybe my facial expressions are showing real disdain for something that somebody did. I mean, I'm still communicating. I haven't said anything like that was a stupid move, but my face could say, could represent that. So I never really hear that speech is more than just speech, because there's communication as well. And then silence. What is really silence at a retreat? Because sometimes you do need to talk.
Yeah,
Does that
so
make
that-
sense?
yeah, sure, that's a very good question. A long time ago, we were very strict about silence on retreat, in the sense of sound talking. But because people do need to communicate, like maybe you're supposed to help clean the living room and you need a broom or something like that. You know, maybe you don't know where the knife goes in the drawer when you're helping clean the kitchen. So we had little sticky notes all over the place. And what people would do, you know, sticky notes, they're really small. So someone would start writing a sticky note, and then they'd glue another note to that sticky note and keep writing, glue another note. They'd, you know, have a short story by the time they're done. And we realized that's not silence. So yes, so silence is not about sound. Silence is about your speech is very focused, functional, no opinion. It's absolutely essential to the situation. Then it's not a problem. That is silence. So also a long time ago, I did a very long retreat in the mountains in Colorado, southern mountains. They weren't 10,000 feet, they were just 8,000 feet. And I mean, they weren't 14,000, they were 8,000. And, you know, it was a 3-month retreat, and there was the sort of caretakers had this very nice house. And if you needed something, you would write them a note, and they would deliver whatever it was you needed. So I needed ashes to sort of de-smell in the outhouse. And they didn't deliver them. So finally I went down and I knocked on their door and I said, I need ashes. And they said, aren't you supposed to be silent? And I said, I am silent. You know? So, you know, if I'd said, you know, I really need ashes, I've been going, you know, a whole week and it's really stinky in there and I can't stand it, and, you know, what's going on here? You guys are terrible, you know, caretakers. That is not silence, but I need ashes. That's silence. That's not a problem. Okay? So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes. Microphone?
So you were talking about two things, Judy. One about, you know, looking at the New York Times and seeing, I'm going to paraphrase you because this is how it feels to me. What fresh shit is going on right now?
Okay, I said what fresh hell awaits, you say what fresh shit. Okay.
And
Shit, hell, which is worse. Okay. Same or different?
I was thinking you said horrors, but.
No. Oh, maybe I did, yeah.
And then also keeping ourselves wide and open or large and open.
Yeah.
How at some point can you continue to do that when there's so much? And there's so, it's like, how do you not get hard?
You have to. You have to.
It's like, how can you care about, it's like finding.
That is caring. That is caring. That's putting down our own fear for ourselves. It's putting down our own worries and our own anxieties and being open to the actual situation in this world. If you're in Gaza, and you want to help the people around you, you can't give in to your fear for yourself. If we get caught up in our fears for ourselves, then we can't reach out.
I'm not fearful for myself, it's just at some point it's like there's too much fucking shit.
Yes, there is too much fucking shit, and there always is too much fucking shit, but usually we don't know about it. I mean, if it weren't for sending, Americans to South Sudan right now, how many of us would be knowing about South Sudan, which is a real hellhole? It's terrible, terrible things going on there. There are terrible things going on in much of this world. I had a cousin who, a long time ago, she was a nurse, and she was a nurse during the height of the AIDS epidemic, in the very beginning, when young men were just dying very terrible, horrible, quick deaths, and it was just overtaking a whole community. And most of her friends were in that community. And so she was nursing people who were her friends or friends of her friends or friends of friends of friends, people from a community that she felt part of. And she was really funny. And she exuded a sense of joy. If you're dying of Kaposi sarcoma, you want someone like that in your room with you. So that ability to open to everything, and take it in and transform it. Sometimes I think of it as, and I'm not the first one to say it, as real estate in our mind. And if we let the pain take over the real estate in our mind, then there's nothing left. So yeah, compassion is not a feeling, compassion is action. And in every way that each of us can, and it's different for everyone, to be compassionate, to be open, not to become numb. It's the opposite of numb. We don't want to become numb, never. But sinking into despair doesn't help either. This is Zen we're doing, your one true self. Everybody has this Buddha nature. Everybody has this true self. And this true self is never born, and it never dies. It cannot be described. It cannot be given a name. And to trust this Buddha nature, which is in us and around us, and we are part of it, and is part of us, and it's never separate. And going back to speech, to trust this don't know that cuts through speech, cuts through thinking, cuts through attachment. It cuts through everything. Just, what is this? What is this? To be able to do that. And when we find ourselves overwhelmed, it helps to do practice that involves physical action, like chanting, bowing, If you find yourself overwhelmed, when you find yourself overwhelmed, try chanting the Great Dharani over and over and over and over and over again. Try that. And then the physical manifestations have a way of working themselves out, and you can become clear. And then, when we face personal things that can be out of our control and terrifying, and everyone in their life at some point, unless you're, hit by a truck when you're 4 years old, everyone at some point in their life faces something like that. Same thing. You can try Great Dharani, Or maybe Kwanzaa Bosal chanting over and over, out loud, over and over. Or maybe if your knees and your back allow you, 1,000 vows a day. That's what they always say in Korea. 500 vows a day, 1,000 vows a day, 2,000 vows a day, you know. Because then it's like this, the physicality of these kinds of practice, they bypass all the stuff that's roiling. It can keep roiling, but we're not following it. And after a while, it just subsides, and then, we can see, we can hear. Okay? Thank you for your question. Good luck. Oh, Margaret had a question and now she disappeared. I'm sorry, Margaret. All right. Are there any? Yes?
You invoked something secondhand,
Oh,
and I want to comment about that.
okay.
Um,
Oh, there you are. Hi, I didn't see you. What?
I lost many friends,
Yes,
brothers, so to speak,
yes.
in my community. And you invoked something secondhand about that. I made a comment about the joy of your friend, the nurse.
Cousin.
Cousin, okay. Was it necessary to correct me just then? Anyway, I just want to challenge you about invoking that secondhand, because the joy of your cousin was a gift that she was given by those men who were dying, who were joyful in their, I was there. They refused to give up their joy of life. And so I just wanted to challenge you because the way you presented that secondhand hit me. And I had to say something, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you because you're correct. And I did not mean to say that she brought joy to them. What I meant to say is that she was not overcome. And you're absolutely correct. That joy was also, she was not giving it to others, it was given to her. So thank you for saying that, because that's true. And that brings us back to the origin of Zen and the tongue, which is when terrible things are happening around us, we can still have joy and we can still be open. So thank you, Margaret, for saying that. And we're over time. So thank you, everybody.